on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
Foraging is without a doubt taking off. The thing that was really kind of lacking was a central space.
I'm like, I can't seem to find this one type of mushroom that I used to eat. And he says, I actually have a bunch right now and I can't figure out how to sell it. So why don't we fix that problem?
With foragers, a lot of times they get access to these incredible ingredients, but don't have people around them who are interested. But there are people interested. So being able to connect to those people, I really appreciate it.
Wild mushrooms, berries, nuts, vegetables, all sorts of stuff.
I think in the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to have a whole different landscape for wild food. I think it's a much more sustainable than we've been led to believe.
Not to mention for folks who are farmers that suddenly have secondary crops on their property.
For these harvesters, especially those who are doing this for a living, their only incentive is to be sustainable, because if they're not sustainable, they're out of business.
We've kind of lost touch with the value of our land, and I think foraging is going to kind of tie that all back in.
Episode 122 of the WildFed podcast, Foraged, Creating a Wild Food Marketplace with Jack Hamrick and Andy Connor, is brought to you by Surthrival. Why just survive when you could thrive? Surthrival.com is your source for nature-based nutritional supplements that keep you thriving in the modern world. From hormone health to immune support, increased metabolism to exercise recovery, Surthrival keeps you thriving when others are just surviving. Check out their Pine Pollen Pure Potency for testosterone support, colostrum for a smoothie ingredient that's 3 times more effective against the flu than vaccines, elk antler for powerful growth and recovery, medicinal mushrooms for immunomodulation and powerful antioxidant capability, and vitamin D3 for all the protective properties you've been hearing about during this pandemic. Go to surthrival.com to see the entire lineup and use the coupon code WildFed for 5% off your order. Surthrival. Why just survive when you could thrive? Season 2 of our TV show WildFed is now on the air. That's right, there's 10 new episodes airing on Outdoor Channel Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. East and again at 10:30 p.m. Our second episode aired this week featuring a nighttime hog hunt on the Bamberger Ranch just outside Austin, Texas, a 5,500-acre regenerative land project that's been running for over 50 years. While we were there, we foraged for beautyberries and then connected with Jesse Griffiths, owner and head chef at Die Dewey and author of The Hog Book, for an incredible meal cooked over the fire. In next Monday's episode, we're heading to the Standing Rock Reservation in the Dakotas to hunt a bull bison and to forage for chokecherries. And we have the honor of having our harvest cooked by an elder from that community as we celebrate the incredible traditional foods of the prairie. Hey, if you don't have cable, you can watch the show live as it airs on friendlytv.com. That's spelled friendly without any vowels, FRNDLY TV.com. You can get a free trial subscription to watch next Monday's episode, and after that, it's just $6.99 per month. Here at WildFed, we're so proud to have a second season on the air, and we really hope you'll tune in either on Outdoor Channel or friendlytv.com. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. I'm pretty excited for today's interview and all of its implications. I'm speaking to Jack and Andy of Foraged.Market, a website dedicated to high-quality specialty and wild foods from around the world. Not only is it a place where you can find and purchase wild foods from vetted, sustainable foragers, but it's also a place where you can sell your own foraged foods or products you forage. Of course, you've always had the ability to sell what you forage, but it's not been easy to find buyers interested in your goods. But Forage brings buyers looking for your products to you. Think Etsy for wild foods, linking sellers and buyers to one another. Imagine that you're a chef or a home cook and you're looking for American Matsutake mushrooms. You could simply order them on Foraged.Marketplace, trusting that they've come from a forager who's been evaluated by the Foraged team to ensure they're using sustainable foraging practices. Or let's say you've been making birch syrup at home and you've got a surplus. You could sell your product on Foraged too with your own online storefront, assuming you've first gone through their sustainable foraging practices verification process. This is a huge leap forward for the wild food and foraging community, opening up avenues for the flow of these incredible sustainable products into our food systems and empowering those who tend the wild to become more self-sufficient, practicing their craft as an income source. It means chefs can more easily access the incredible ingredients that we foragers have been enjoying for years, broadening the public's palate and perception of what the wild world produces, and thereby placing value on species that might otherwise be forgotten, ensuring that at least some of these species get the attention and eventual protection they need to exist in perpetuity. It also opens up pathways for more scrutiny into the sustainability of our practices and to subtly shift the foraging world away from a taking model and more towards a tending model. I've got really high hopes for what Jack and Andy are doing at Foraged, and I'm really looking forward to the way this could positively impact the foraging world, and also to see how it might benefit you, the listener, in either accessing wild foods you're interested in or in sharing the wild foods you love with others. Andy, Jack, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Daniel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, really glad to have you guys here as well. You're offering something really amazing to the public, and I want to get a little bit of that story. So, why don't one of you guys kick it off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your business is, and then we'll hear from the other one of you.
Yeah, sure. So we are Foraged. We've been in business now live since May of 2021. The idea came to us actually in December of 2020. I was chatting with my friend Andy here, who's now my co-founder, and was actually asking him about how to get into seaweed cultivation. At the time, Andy was is a professional nature photographer, I'll say. And I was seeing if he knew anyone on the coast of North Carolina who did anything with aquaculture. And we kind of got to talking about other ideas around the food space. We're both really interested in unusual foods, if you will. And I randomly had brought up mushrooms. I'm like, hey, I feel like mushrooms are everywhere right now, and I can't seem to find this one type of mushroom that I used to eat at my favorite restaurant in Washington, D.C. It's called chicken of the woods. Have you ever heard of it or anything like that? And he says, yeah, of course I have. I actually have a bunch right now, and I can't figure out how to sell it. I said, what do you mean? I've been searching everywhere. I can't figure out how to buy chicken of the woods. And Andy says, yeah, I'm a certified forager. I'm legally allowed to sell it. And I really can't figure out how to do that. So I kind of had a light bulb moment there thinking, well, I can't figure out how to buy that. I'm stuck here in New York City. I really would love some. And Andy has a whole bunch and he can't figure out how to sell that. So why don't we fix that problem? So we started working on the idea. I mean, it really was a light bulb moment. Fast forward a few months from December 2020 through spring of 21 and ended up quitting our day jobs, seeing how passionate the community is around both wild mushrooms in particular, as well as other wild foods like truffles, berries, nuts, vegetables, all sorts of stuff, and launched the site in May 2021, and it's really just been off to the races since then.
I've been enjoying. I just actually had some truffles from you guys a few minutes ago. Some of the right before we started, the black truffles, and enjoyed the huckleberries in my smoothie the other day. Some morels and my wild rice, which my wife also wanted me to say thanks for. So I've been able to enjoy some of the incredible stuff from your website. But I would love to hear Andy's sort of startup version of this story as well.
It was interesting because me and Jack met, 2016, Jack? We were freshmen in college at the time. I had mutual friends. I had just gotten into, we were going to UNCW at the time. Jack had later transferred to University of Virginia. And we became really close, had same interests, really just got along, the type of people that just kind of click. And we just loved and, had mutual friends, enjoyed hanging out with each other. And, he went off to UVA, hadn't really been in touch too much. We had, correspondences here and there, but it was funny, he called me and it was just kind of one of those conversations that were so spontaneous, but seemed to be so aligned as far as ideals and both seeing a huge problem with it was kind of just the basis of seeing a problem with the food industry as a whole. We saw that a lot of people in general just have weird diets, right? They're just, American diets are not the best. So, both being connoisseurs of specialty foods. Jack was sustainability professional for several years before, we joined this. And, again, he was talking about seaweed cultivation. Escargot, I think, came up too. Jack, I don't know if you remember that, but escargot is the snails cultivation. Very, very interesting way of cultivating snails and selling it to restaurants and stuff like that. And we had, discussed his favorite dish at a local restaurant in DC, one of those two. It was chicken of the woods, and that's kind of what got us started into, oh my God, I got chicken of the woods. Oh, how do I get it? And that's kind of how it evolved into that conversation. I had taken Olga and Trad's class, Mushroom Mountain. It was a certification class for wild mushrooms specifically, not plants, just wild mushrooms. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was, obviously it was, I think it was in November of 2019, I believe I took that class. I took it and I just had this feeling in the back of my mind. I was like, this is incredibly easy, really fun. Obviously, mushrooms are nothing to joke about, right? There's obviously dangerous species that can kill you. There's a couple that will make you really sick. There's a couple that look just like the ones that you want to eat, but they're really not good to eat. So I knew it was a risky kind of thing to do wild mushroom foraging, but the certification program definitely kind of was also a light bulb moment in my head of like, wow, they're making this really easy, and obviously not every single state is going to have the same laws and structures and such, but the ones that there's a lot of states that are quickly adopting that same certification structure, and in fact that same class has been taken, but has been shadowed by the FDA, and they loved it. They thought Trad did a wonderful job. And I think he did a wonderful job. He's a professional mycologist. Olga, they've been doing it for 15 years now. In fact, they're, a big part of what we do at Foraged. And that's kind of what got me thinking with Jack too, is just, how can we just bring this all together? How can we make their certifications more of a commonplace thing? Because, foraging is, without a doubt taking off. And I feel like the thing that was really kind of lacking was a central space, something that we could have, not really a governing body, but a place where people can find, information that's useful, information that's helpful, places to get certifications all in one place, or at least resources to do so. And that's kind of how it kind of evolved for me. I had, caught the mushroom bug earlier on, and really just after taking that class and speaking with Jack, I knew it was just an opportunity that was just waiting to happen. And here we are almost a year later, in May, going to be a year later. And I've met so many incredible people along the way, and every single day I meet everyone, even just all walks of life, right? From lawyers to people who, have started it part-time and now are doing it full-time thanks to us. It's just an incredible journey, and it's just starting. It's amazing.
Yeah, it occurs to me, because when I first saw what you guys do, and I want to just get clear here, we can kind of define what your business does here in a moment. But when I first saw what you guys were doing, I thought like, oh, it's interesting it's taken this long for something like this to come to the forefront. But then at the same time, I don't know that it would have worked before. We've reached, you kind of hit on it a moment ago, but we have reached this interesting time where there's a very palpable renaissance in wild foods. I mean, this is this thing that obviously wild foods go back to the first humans, right? So this is an ancient thing, but there's times where it's popular and times where people forget about it. And we're in one of those moments where there's a huge resurgence and an interest level. You mentioned a moment ago, sort of everybody from, the lawyers to the folks who basically don't have running water, right? It's like there's like a huge range of characters who are into foraging now. It's no longer easy to sort of just pigeonhole what somebody who forages will be like. So it's a big broad swath of the population, and getting to do a show about wild foods, on cable, I see how diverse the audience is. So let's define what you guys do a little bit, and because there's kind of two aspects. So you got like a front end side and a back end side, and both are really, really fascinating. I think useful to the people listening. So Jack, could you kind of talk to us about? You first described it to me as like an Etsy type shop or an Etsy type website for wild and specialty foods.
Yeah, that's right. So kind of the easiest way to understand what we do is we're kind of like Etsy, but rather than arts and crafts and, cursive handwriting. We are,
Hey, I shopped for my wife at Christmas there.
Oh yeah.
yeah, I just got married last summer, and my house is just filled with Etsy leftovers from the wedding.
Everything's cursive.
Everything is cursive. I don't know why. So it's rather than all that crap, similar concept to Etsy, but it's morels, chanterelles, truffles, pawpaws, huckleberries, seaweed, you name it. So it's a platform marketplace, just like eBay or Etsy or some of the other examples. And really what we're about is on the one side for small food businesses is giving them the empowerment to go pro or otherwise really expand their potential business landscape from what normally is quite confined to geographic location. So if you're, say, in Bend, Oregon, you'll probably go to the farmer's market. You're probably not going to talk to a Michelin-starred chef in DC. And what we're able to do with our marketplace for these small food businesses is instantly give you access to the entire country in the U.S. and beyond. We're actually in about 7 countries already. So it's a huge opportunity for individuals with these unique food businesses. In particular for wild food, the opportunity really stems from being able to go direct to consumer. We hear stories all the time of people, say, for example, in Maine, who are selling fresh grade A Matsutake for $5 a pound, for example. That same distributor then is going to a restaurant or a consumer selling it for $100 a pound, which is absurd. So instead, they're able to go direct to consumer, sell it for, say, $40 a pound, really high quality stuff. That then gets a better price to the consumer. They get the connection with the food producer. The food producer gets a much higher profit margin for themselves. They're able to feed their family. And it's really a win-win for everyone on all the sides. And same thing goes for the buyer side. If you live in Phoenix, Arizona, I don't think your farmer's market is going to have fresh black trumpet mushrooms, but maybe if it does, congrats to you. So it's really providing access. I like to say that we don't sell mushrooms or we don't sell truffles, whatever that might be. We really are providing access. And if access is pawpaws, then that's great. And it really makes us really encouraged and really happy to see that the feedback we're getting from consumers is that they're just ecstatic to be able to find these foods that they otherwise would just be completely shut out from.
So you've got the wild food enthusiast like me, let's say, who, there's something that I don't have access to, like, black truffles, for instance, so I can go there and I can find those. But then maybe I produce an acorn flower that I want to sell, so I could also then have a shop there and sell that. Or it could be that I'm a restaurateur and I'm looking for a very specific ingredient and I can't find it. I could find it there. If I make a salve or a soap or some kind of specialty product out of my wild foods or my specialty foods, could I sell that there as well? I mean, this is basically a place where people can sell food with a story.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Food with a story is really what makes my heart sing.
Yeah, cool.
It's all about access. It's all about connection. It's really highlighting the people who are doing this fascinating work. They're really out there day to day that I think the common person's really forgot where their food comes from. You can't just plant a 1,000-acre plot of truffles or morels or whatever it is. If you have a whole bushel of corn at the grocery store, you have no idea where that's from. Being able to get, whether it's acorn flour, a fresh product, packaged product, dried product, whatever it is, where it's from. There's always a story behind it. We interact with different food businesses from, there's a guy in Georgia who is a cryptocurrency systems network engineer, like genius guy, and he's also a really gifted forager, and so there's everything from that to a Vietnam veteran in Pennsylvania who's had this heirloom farm in his family for forever, and he sells his heirloom fruits and vegetables and mushrooms on the site. And that's what food with a story means to me, is that diversity of backgrounds, and then being able to support those businesses and have that direct knowledge of what's on your plate.
Man, I love it because, for me growing up, like I guess a lot of the work I do, you'd call like influencer work today. It's like one of those cringy terms, but it's like what I do. So growing up, I always had the kind of personality where I want to share and communicate. But in my hometown, that was like only so well received, But then the internet gave me access to the world, and I found plenty of, people who are interested in what I had to say. They didn't all need to be right in my backyard. And so I think with foragers, a lot of times, they get access to these incredible ingredients, but don't necessarily have people around them who are interested. but there are people interested, but they might be located around the country and the world. And so being able to connect with, connect those people is just, it's an awesome service. But like I said, maybe 5 years ago, it wasn't ready, like now is the time. So I really appreciate it. Andy, something you were talking about before is foraging certifications. One of the things that's come up on this podcast over the last couple of years is this, being a hunter or an angler, I'm just hyper regulated in what I do.
Right.
Everything's got a tag associated with it, a license associated with it. I have to take a course to show that I have basic proficiency, and in many cases, my method of take is very strictly outlined. So it's not just that I can take a turkey, but I have to take a turkey with a 20 gauge or a 12 gauge, and then that has to be with a certain ammunition type. And so it's very, very tightly regulated. And then you get into foraging, and what we're experiencing now with this resurgence that we're seeing is that, wow, this is pretty loosey-goosey out here. And
of course.
And we also have what's another strange component of it too, which you're well aware of, is it's not as clean as you'd imagine with this, in the sense of like you'd think people who are into the environment, people who are into nature would be like, yay, pro foraging. But actually you can run into a lot of conflict where people are like, hey, you're taking too much from the wild landscape. And so there's a PR issue that's come up as well. And I think largely due to the fact that it is an unregulated activity. So how are you guys approaching this? What did you learn from your certification for mushrooming? And then how do you see this kind of playing out in the big picture so that foraging can go on in perpetuity the way it should, and we can all trust that the ingredients that we're getting access to are sustainable and something we can feel good about, so that we're not just kind of repeating what happened in the past or what's happening in the modern food systems?
Yeah, it's a great question, Daniel. And like you said, it's an attack that's pretty common for us. It's you can't really mention the word a business or foraged, and people literally cringe and yell and scream and do all these things that you wish they wouldn't. I think it's just a lack of understanding to a certain degree. Obviously, they do have a point of over harvesting and all that. And our job here at Foraged, specifically relating to sustainability and harvesting, is not to promote the most amount you can get. It's literally, how can we make this sustainable for the future, right? Because if Forage was out to just make a buck, right, it really wouldn't be that sustainable if we all just wanted to get everyone together and sell as much as they can. I think the half of the marketplace itself is really establishing education, right? So how to properly harvest. Is there a way to cultivate some of these ingredients? Which recently there has been tremendous breakthroughs, cultivation of chaga, cultivation of morels, actually, and the Danish Morel Project. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Really, really exciting stuff. I think in the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to have a whole different landscape for wild food. And I think it's a much more sustainable than we've been led to believe. And I think, to our point prior to the show starting, I think and actually you guys had brought this up in the Jenna Roselle interview that you did, the second one, is that we currently get our food from the earth, right? There's really not much of a difference between agriculture and why. It's just a different scene, right? So is there a way that we can promote foraging and also promote the cultivation of all these species and the proper harvesting, and even another thing too is, can we promote the access to lands that we can then utilize, right? Private lands that are, can we lease out private lands? Can we use areas of the country that are not currently accessible to normal human beings due to, trespassing laws and all that? Can we get leasing permits to utilize these lands and promote growth and promote a different type of agriculture? That's really what I'm interested in, is making this a long-term thing, not just like a quick buck, right? Because it's easy to say, hey, and it's a good way to make money, right? It is. It's a wonderful income source for a lot of people, and I think it's only going to get more popular. But to your point of the wrath that we've been facing, is, I think it's a much bigger picture than that. I think it's really, really important to establish the fact that this is not just a short-term gig. This is a long-term play. And back to the certifications thing, I too am a very avid hunter. I grew up hunting, grew up traveling all over the United States to go hunting, specifically up in game birds, chukar, Hungarian partridge, pheasant, quail. Kansas, Nebraska were kind of my stomping grounds. And, of course, if you go out there, you do walk-in hunting areas, or you knock on someone's door and say, hey, can I hunt here? And a lot of that was, like you said, heavily regulated. You have to have a permit or a license. You have to have, the proper gear. You have to have, blaze orange hat on. You have to have all these things for safety and for, hunters are notoriously painted in a bad light from a lot of people. But in fact, they're, and I think this is among the hunters, this is a pretty popular thought process. But hunters actually do give back a lot to the lands, and if you reach out to the right audience. But the other thing too is wild mushrooms are not. It's not like hunting, right? When you hunt something, it's pretty clear it's a deer, right? Or it's pretty clear it's an elk. It's pretty clear it's an upland game bird if you understand the flushing patterns and all that. Mushrooms, it's not that quite clear. So it's a pretty risky game, right? So if we just have all these people going out in the woods and just picking whatever the hell they find, it can get dangerous pretty quick. So I think certifications, honestly, in my opinion,
we like to say there's no poison. We always say there's no poisonous lookalike deer.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's not like you just go out and get poisoned by a deer. Exactly. And I think that's something that was alarming to me, is that there wasn't enough regulation in someone for selling wild food. And that's kind of where I thought, maybe this needs to be a little more brought out to light. I mean, it shouldn't be a bad thing if you have to, understand what you're picking and understand how to properly pick it, leaving 30% hot behind and encouraging the spreading of spores by using certain equipment, holes in your foraging net, all things like that. And I think there's a lot to it when it comes to the regulations. Again, Trad and Olga's class is a wonderful resource, but it only applies to like 7 or 8 states. There are 50 states. So the remaining states have very vague laws, very vague understandings of wild mushroom foraging, and even the sale of wild mushrooms. So that's kind of a big thing for us, is really establishing a credibility to the landscape of that, and how can we make it long term? How can we turn the agricultural system in on itself and find a new way of creating food and cultivating food and making it fun and sexy and for everyone? I mean, it's really, I think we've kind of lost touch with the value of our land, and I think foraging is going to kind of tie that all back in.
Not to mention for folks who are farmers that suddenly have secondary crops on their property, because there's now an interest in whatever it is, the mushrooms that come up there, the chickweed that comes up between their rows, or whatever it is that their acorn crop, or all those kind of things. Once that we establish the market, there's a couple challenges that I see, like having spoken to wardens about this. They're like, look, man, I don't have the time to learn about all these plants. And it's like, well, it's actually more than plants too. It's multiple new kingdoms of life. Because in the world of hunting, whether we're talking about fish, birds, or mammals, we're talking about animalia. But here we're talking about the kingdom of fungi, or with seaweeds, we're talking about the kingdom of algae. And then we've got plantae. So it's like multiple kingdoms of life. This stuff is really hard to regulate. But I also want to go back to one other thing, which is that one thing we know, and we know it for sure, because the anthropology is very clear. Peoples who hunt and gather outside of agriculture create more abundance through their harvest practices. And one of the things that I want to make sure gets into our foraging culture in the coming years is this idea of, how do I not just leave enough for the next forager, but how do I leave this landscape so that it's more productive? The leak patch is bigger next time I come back, not smaller.
Right. That's exactly right.
A lot of the folks who are like against foraging, one, I wonder when they go to the restaurant, and they sit down and they see the foraged mushrooms on the menu, if they don't order them, because I kind of doubt it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean.
Out there railing against it or whatever. It's like,
right.
But but I think we can do more. But it's going to take guys like yourselves who are speaking. You guys are in a unique position because you're going to be communicating with the actual harvesters and producers. I'm kind of excited to see that kind of business side of it. I'm wondering, Jack, if you can speak to this too, just your opinions, having dealt with all of these different producers as well as buyers now, what you're seeing and how you see the sustainability of it.
Yeah, definitely. So, for context, my whole academic and professional career has been around sustainability, especially sustainability innovations as it applies to typically like enterprise scale businesses. So, I've done everything from hydrogen trucks, electric trucks, solar, wind, waste and recycling technology, but I've always had the bug for food. So, I'm really happy to be back in the food space. I think I find it a bit odd. Some of the we call them the vocal minority, the people who are just squawking about pillaging the earth and such. I find it strange because typically people don't have such a strong reaction to the factory farm beef that you're getting at Costco, or the bluefin tuna at your sushi restaurant, which is their stock is going to collapse. Like, I find it strange what things are labeled as unsustainable versus sustainable. There's typically quite a discrepancy for where people choose to lay their values down. So I think for us, for one on the harvesting side, think to maybe like one step deeper for these harvesters, especially those who are doing this for a living. Their only incentive is to be sustainable, because if they're not sustainable, they're out of business.
Yep.
So if you overharvest your ramp patch, you overharvest your ginseng, you're not going to put food on the table for your family the next year around. That is not the case for a factory farm for pork or beef or 10,000 acres of corn, right? That's going to be around. The government's going to help you. So I think fundamentally that's a bit of an oversight I see from the harvesting side, is that there is an explicit incentive to be sustainable. From the buyer side, I think particularly I find a lot of passion from those who don't have access at all to even woods. So people in a city, people in the Southwest, wherever that might be, for them the sustainability component is quite different, where it's more of an active choice against the things like the factory farms or the monocropping, where they can actively choose to support things that are polycropped, if you will, agroforestry, if you will. And for them, it's a sustainability choice, both from a socioeconomic perspective of supporting small businesses, supporting specialty producers, as well as kind of a vote against the giant industry of agriculture, and a vote for the small boutique individual alternative agriculture sources.
How are you able to, or how does it work when somebody wants to become a seller? Like, are they vetted in some way? And like if I want to start a store there, what's the process look like? My wife's always like, we should sell some of this maple syrup, or we should sell some of this acorn flour. And I'm like, no way. Like, the prices I would want to charge would make it inaccessible to people. So I'm curious about that too. Like, who sets the price? Does the market set the price? Do you set the price? Does the seller set the price? So how does all this work on the back end for folks who want to get involved? Because I'm just thinking about, I'm excited to talk to you guys, because I'm thinking about thousands of people hearing this going, whoa, I could start up like a side hustle doing something I love. So what does it look like for them?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Also, we are actively looking for maple syrup and acorn flour producers, so we should talk after this.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not getting mine. We'll get right back to the show in a moment, but first, right now I'm wearing my new WildFed hoodie. We really took our time choosing these hoodie blanks before we had them printed. They've got a charcoal body and an olive green hood and sleeves, and they've got our Food Is All Around You logo on the front with a really cool foraging basket, fishing rod, and suppressed rifle on the back with the text Hunt, Forage, Fish. These are super soft and comfortable, look great, and work well in the field or in town. I really love the thickness too. They're fairly light and perfect for the spring days and summer nights ahead. Right now, they're 10% off with the coupon code HFF10 at wild-fed.com. Show your love for WildFed and the wild food lifestyle. Head over to wild-fed.com and use the coupon code HFF10, that's shorthand for Hunt, Forage, Fish 10, for 10% off your new favorite hoodie. Now, back to the show.
The one thing that we've seen is we started Foraged as an open market, right? It was just like Etsy. You could sign in, post your product, you're good to go. That quickly turned south. We would get all sorts of people coming in. Things from psychedelics to anything that was just not approved, right? Nothing that there was all sorts of things.
I can sell my mushrooms here.
Yeah, I know. It was a big learning curve for us, and we took that and we learned from it, and we said, all right, how can we do this the right way? So we've set up a pretty, not in depth, but several questionnaire on our site. That's kind of like an application, if you will. People from all over the world can apply, and we quote unquote vet them, but we just kind of look through them, set up a call, right? We want to see you face to face. We want to understand your story. We want to understand, do you have any business background? If not, how can we help you? We really turned inwardly to a very hands-on approach. And I can tell you, Daniel, it has really changed our relationship with the community. We are so close to our vendors now. I text out all of our vendors all the time. In fact, our community is growing so rapidly and so close that, we have several of our foragers writing articles for us, writing blog articles, educational articles on proper harvesting tactics. Got a ramp article coming out in a couple of weeks here from one of our foragers on sustainable ramp harvesting, because as you may know, ramps are pretty over harvested in some areas. There's improper harvesting tactics. So really
contentious.
It is. And it really kind of showed us the value of, properly vetting people first and understanding, where they're coming from. Are they just some random name on a site, or are they actually someone you can understand, you can then talk to, converse with, understand, where their background is, how good are they at this? Are they just beginning out or just starting? Or are they experts? Have they been doing this for many, many years? And as soon as we turned that application on, it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me and Jack and our newest member, JB too. And it was definitely the better road, definitely the better path. We're dealing with food, right? We're dealing with things that are going in your mouth. Like, you're going to ingest them. We want to make sure it's coming from someone who's credible, who knows what they're doing, and who has the right mindset in doing so. And I think that really has helped us out tremendously.
It's been huge. Daniel, after we implemented the form and the questionnaire, 2 weeks later, we were able to cancel our daily customer service meeting because we had no more customer service issues at all, which was a huge relief.
Yeah, so much easier.
What about from the buyer side? So let's say I come in and I've got a restaurant in New York City and I want 6 different ingredients and they're coming all from different sellers. How is all that managed? And who manages that?
Yeah, good question. So we actually find that to be one of the most compelling aspects of the marketplace model, is that rather than all of these untraceable, unknown ingredients just getting to your kitchen as a chef from some no-name distributor, we find that chefs actually are jumping up and down enthusiastic about having chanterelles from Oregon and Matsutake from Maine and pawpaws from North Carolina all coming to their restaurant. They can put that on their menu saying, these pawpaws are from Juneberry Ridge in North Carolina. These chanterelles are from Oregon Coast mushrooms. People really, really love, again, food with a story behind that. For chefs in particular, we do take special care for a lot of the high-end restaurants. We have about half dozen or so Michelin-starred and James Beard or award-winning restaurants. We do have like a wholesale kind of chef page where chefs can come and talk to us directly. We kind of handhold some of those orders. They tend to be pretty large. We want to make sure they're always coming in good quality, always coming in on good timing. Chefs are pretty persnickety about when ingredients arrive, making sure that their menus are up to date and all. One of the most exciting things that I really enjoy is, particularly in Washington, D.C., the food scene there is spectacular. It's very relaxed, but very thoughtful. And all the time we'll be working with a chef. It'll be, say, 4 o'clock. Dinner service starts at 5:30. They haven't even printed the menu yet. And we'll be in there with, chicken of the woods or hedgehogs, whatever. The chef will be like, oh, great. I'll add this as an appetizer or a special dish. Like, I haven't even printed the menu and we serve dinner in 1 hour. So it's awesome. It's really cool to have that flexibility. Some restaurants, high end or not, don't like to be so flexible, which is fine. Everyone has their own thing, but we like to talk about culinary thought leadership, people who are really forward thinking about local sourcing, traceable sourcing, knowing where your food comes from. And those are the kind of chefs that we really thrive with, because their mindset is exactly the mindset that we're working on.
Will their orders come from, it's not like you guys receive in all these different ingredients and then centrally ship them out. They'll come from each of the different sellers, or how does that aspect of it work?
Yeah, direct forest to table, we like to say. So it'll come directly from the producer. So if you're doing, for the example of pawpaws North Carolina, chanterelles from Oregon, matsutake from Maine, you'll get 3 separate boxes directly from the harvest.
Every time you say pawpaws like that, you're making me just cringe inside. We don't have them here, and I feel like this summer I'm gonna eat many, many cases because you guys are gonna be able to get them to me. Because I'm always. It's just, man, it's a tough one to know that fruit's out there. So
hey, we actually were just working with Allagash Brewing up in Maine.
Oh, no way! Wow.
Yeah. They ordered a bunch of pawpaws from one of our foragers in North Carolina, and they're going to do some brew testing with it.
Really? Can't wait.
Ooh, man, I wish somebody put that into a hard cider. I noticed on your site quite a few producers from Maine, which I felt really proud to see. And even competitively, in a sense. So I saw the chaga, for instance, was one that I saw multiple sellers. Talk to me about that part. I asked you before, we didn't get to it. Who sets the pricing for products and how much control? Let's say somebody's listening to this, they've got a specialty product that could fit in here. Talk to them specifically, like how will their store work? Who manages that part of it?
Sure. Yeah. So we're there to empower and support. We're not there to tell you what to do or what price to set or really anything. It's your business, and we want to be there to support you and enable you. We're there with a ton of resources, whether that's recommendations on pricing. People text us all the time with asking questions about that kind of stuff, and we're always happy to give our perspective. With we have such a lens into the market now. We can give good recommendations, but it's always up to the person. And we see interesting things with because everything is directly from the producer. There's always a different story. So if your story around your chaga versus someone else's, price has never really been a thing we've gotten much feedback on because everything is so unique. Everything is always special and one of a kind that prices tend to kind of flow as they do. I will say, though, that we've had feedback from some of the specialty food distributors who have not been very happy with us
on your pricing
because the people that they used to, price gouge and just take all their stuff from them for, pennies on the dollar, they're no longer able to compete because now we've empowered those individual foragers and farmers and makers to do it on their own. So I don't mind the negative feedback from those kinds of distributors. But we offer a ton of resources. One thing that we really help people with is shipping. Shipping fresh food is not easy. Thankfully, we have really good relationship with UPS. Our rates are like sometimes 80% lower than you would get, if you go to the UPS store. Everything's overnighted. We offer a ton of recommendations around packaging. We have video tutorials, really anything that a new seller would have questions about. They're quite common, the questions. So we've done the best that we can and have a lot more resources coming up to help answer those common questions and provide everything we can to empower and support new sellers.
Yeah, my huckleberries came frozen. So did my my truffles. So they came on nice ice packs. That was really cool. Talk to me about what you want to see in the store. Like for all the people listening, what are some ingredients that you're hoping to get into the store this year, or what kind of goods are you wanting to see more of so that people get a sense of like, hey, maybe I'm a fit for that?
Yeah, great question. Coming up, everyone's, of course, really excited for ramp and morel season. So those are the big ticket items right now. We have a couple of people around the country who do ramps already, but there's such high demand for it, sustainably harvested ramps, of course, that if anyone listening works with ramps or fiddleheads or morels, check us out at Foraged.Market. We would love to chat with you because it's going to be a big year this year.
Wow. And then what about bigger picture outside of this season? Besides just whole ingredients, so like let's say that I do shagbark hickory nuts. Can I also sell shagbark hickory nut butter or oil or, value add products as well? Like how does that all work? And are there sellers now who are doing that kind of thing there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's we have I think we've got I mean, several value-added products already. One popular actually thing is speaking of ramps, ramp butter is actually a huge thing that we're really trying to get into. Value-added products like hickory nut spreads, anything that you can make. Now, there is again the vagueness of these laws, cottage food laws in particular. That's something we're working on right now with our newest edition, JB. We're kind of gathering all the cottage food laws, gathering all of this information for our vendors, so that we understand what can be done, what can't be done. Because obviously with value added products, it can get a little tricky. But for things that are like raw ingredients, like acorn flour, your different types of flours, seasonings, right? Generally, we definitely promote that, absolutely. And we really, speaking of the kind of space of where we want to get into, really the sky's the limit as far as vegetables, specialty vegetables, fruits, all of that stuff is really what we're interested in getting into in the next year or so. Away from obviously meats and seafood, we're going to kind of wait to tackle that later on, but definitely something we're thinking about, and it takes a lot of planning to do all this stuff. It takes a lot of outreach, takes a lot of outreach, takes a lot of patients in particular, to reach out to producers ourselves, and obviously get applications ourselves, vet them, make sure they're a good fit, and get them up on our site. And that's kind of part of my vendor onboarding process. I set their store up, get them all ready. We are kind of working on revamping our category structure so that we can have a little bit more of a broad oversight into many, many different categories. We did start with wild mushrooms, but that's just the start. We did that because it was a relatively easy, quote unquote easy, but it really wasn't super easy, but it's relatively straightforward market to dig into, especially because of the certification. But yeah, that's definitely something we want to kind of harp on is handmade ingredients. Food artisans are really, it brings that much more to the story, and also anything related to that is just a huge proponent to that food with a story label. Is the kind of handmade ingredients like the flours, all that stuff, seasonings.
Yeah. Yeah, one example we have coming up soon is we've been working with a specialty food value add product producer who does a lot of work in Peru.
Oh yeah.
And he has this really unique native Peruvian chili pepper that he makes his hot sauce out of. So that's a great example. So we love things like that, whether it's like indigenous North American foods, birch syrups, or things with unique types of vanilla, acorn flours, all the things that are non-perishable oftentimes actually have more of an opportunity to distill a story within it, because there's typically more than one ingredient. There's typically some sort of like family background to it or indigenous spin to it. So all those things are more than welcomed, and we're actively looking for new additions. The other thing that I am personally very interested in from a sustainability perspective is invasive species. Once we actually do get into meat and seafood, we're thinking that we're probably going to start from that angle, things like wild boar, zebra mussels, that sort of stuff. And then more near term, there's so many invasive plant species that are delicious. Autumn olive, trifoliate orange, knotweed, garlic mustard. We haven't just given our bandwidth between the two of us, now three of us, gotten too far into those types of spaces. But I think that's going to be a really compelling blend of one, pure-hearted sustainability play, helping our native environment thrive. Also, they're delicious, and also just very cool foraging aspect to be able to incorporate all those different elements into it.
There's so many areas here that I'm thinking like, wow, your team's going to need to grow. I hope you're ready for this on the business side, Jack, because there's a lot there, man. Because I mean, gosh, what you just said about the invasive species is such a huge component of it. And then I'm listening to you guys talk about meats and seafood, and I'm wondering, the first episode of the second season of WildFed went on air Monday, and we're harvesting cicadas from Brood 10. And we brought him to a really nice restaurant down there and had a white glove setting, extremely high-end dinner with cicadas that we foraged, And I'm wondering, like, okay, so this year, I forget which brood comes up this year, but let's say I want to go get, several kilos and freeze the nymphs. Like, there's people who want to eat those. Is that something you guys would do, or that's like down the road for you? Because it's like in a weird niche between meats and seafoods and plants. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's how we like to, in how we've expanded our categories. We've done a very concerted effort to expand into kind of in decreasingly less unique things. So like, for example, Kobe beef and Wagyu, they're specialty foods. They're great. They're unique, but like, they're not that rare. Cicadas are rare. That's cool. Mm-hmm. That's very unique. So like, that's a great place to expand into as we go further and further out. Also, I'll say I grew up in Northern Virginia, and your cicadas at your restaurant were definitely way better than the cicadas I ate when I was like 10 years old on the playground. So I would have loved to have tried those.
Yeah. Another category that comes up for me, I'm thinking of my friends down in York, Maine. I'll be featuring them this season in a tuna episode. Nice. And they like to go, they go out, they live on the river. They go out to sea, about 20-minute boat ride out to sea, push out into some deep water. They drop down about 20 feet and start pulling seawater. They bring it back into greenhouses, dehydrate it off, and produce specialty salts. Really nice, big grains of finishing salt.
Very cool.
Yeah, seems like that kind of thing would be a fit as well, I imagine.
Oh yeah,
100%. Absolutely.
Cool, man. Yeah, so you're gonna have a lot of categories. You're gonna have this, I hope, this huge educational wing at some point. I was also thinking about, I live in fiddleheading country here for ostrich fur and fiddleheads, and I don't know who did it, but I had seen at one point a really nice infographic that gave some good, a good explanation of what sustainable foraging looks like in that category. And, the thing about it for me is that every single species needs its own, it's not like you can, it doesn't work when people go like, just do this with what you harvest. Right. It's like, no, it's got to be specific to that species. Right. And sometimes to that subspecies, whatever, very specific. So, I'm looking forward to the day that there is like an infographic for every one of them. So that when I think of a new thing, I want to go out and look for this. Like, I have a way of accessing anyway. I can picture you guys being in the position to do that over time. I mean, obviously you guys are early in, but it just seems like there's a lot of room to expand, and now's the time. You guys are poised for something really awesome, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. That reminds me, one thing we've been working on for quite some time that we haven't launched yet, but it'll be coming soon. We call it experiences. It's a way to book experiences with experts in their fields. So whether that's a sustainable foraging demonstration, or how to inoculate a tree to grow truffles, or how to cook with XYZ wild or specialty food, anything that's real world, immersive with experts is part of this. And we're hopefully going to roll it out in a few months or so. I think a really cool component of that will be, you could take someone who's never really even been to the woods, let alone, grew up in the woods or foraged. They can go out in the woods with an expert, whether that's a forager, a hunter, or a chef, get the real experience. They can teach you about sustainability, teach you about the local environment, teach you about how to cook it, bring it back to the restaurant or the kitchen, whatever that is, cook it up for you, give you a cooking lesson, everything from that to Andy is a professional nature photographer. Go out with Andy. He'll teach you how to take wonderful photos of the world around you. I think the possibilities are limitless here, but one of the kind of beachheads that we're looking to establish with that is getting people who truly are experts in foraging and the best practices around that, and giving them more light, letting them talk to more people, getting people more involved with that, so we can really share not just text on a blog, but true real world experiences.
Okay, so somebody who's listening to this who's like, man, I don't see myself ever, like the cost of what my acorn flour would be is prohibitively expensive because of the labor that I put into it, but I could offer my course or class, or I could offer one of those immersive experiences. Somebody could come here and learn to do it with me. So rather than just selling it, maybe that's another angle for people who are listening to have sort of something on the side where they can be sharing their love of the outdoors or their love of foraging, with the audience that accesses your site.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a huge pillar for us.
It's really awesome, you guys. What do you see this is probably a challenging world from a business perspective to do market research into. I would imagine it's like, I wish I knew like who are the foragers, like who are the wild food enthusiasts. It's like a little bit difficult. A lot of the people getting to do this show, right? Like the number of people that I try to talk to who are like, I don't have a computer. We're in the like, for our listeners who probably don't realize this, like we send out headsets to all of our guests who don't have them, because most of them don't have them, because most of them are much more interested in the woods.
That would be me.
Yeah.
I have your headset on right now.
You do, right? And so, so that's like the thing that I find really interesting here too, because one of the things that's great about your service is, just to be kind of frank about it, it's like a lot of folks who forage don't have a strong interest in business. Doesn't mean that they don't have something to offer the market though, because they do, but they need somebody sort of in between. I think that's why Etsy has worked so well, because a lot of the people who want to do crafts, not necessarily run a business. And so having sort of this intermediary service allows them to have a beautiful store. Things look really consistent. People can shop with them without them having to feel like they've had to completely, for a lot of folks, it feels like selling out, like people who aren't interested in business. So, I think for a lot of foragers, man, that's just not their thing. They want to be barefoot with a basket in the woods a lot of the times.
Totally. Yeah, that's really one of the insights that we had very early on, is that if someone wants to make a go of this as a livelihood, what are their options? Are they going to make their own website and build their own custom website and market their website and do all these things? Like, I don't think so. For the vast majority of people, I don't think so. The other options are what post on Facebook Marketplace, and your morels are going to get flagged for psilocybin for some reason, or someone's going to DM you or something. Like, basically, one of the central components that we set up early on was we want to make it turnkey, super seamless. You don't have to market yourself. We have thousands and thousands of people on our newsletter that we will promote you to. We have almost 40,000 people on social media who are very engaged with us. It's turnkey. You join, you list your wonderful products. It's not selling out. You're providing a wonderful service and a wonderful food product to other people around the country who wouldn't have access to it. And we basically handle everything else. The shipping is all automated. Tons of people come to our site every day. It's really as no-brainer as it could get, is kind of what we're trying to do.
What about other foraging resources? Do you see yourself going into, something I've thought about for a long time is like, there's a lot of products that I think should exist that don't exist. Like if I want hunting equipment, I go to, any of the outfitters, and they've got enough to make my head spin of every product that I can imagine. So when you want foraging equipment, a lot of times you make it yourself. And I think that the foraging world up until now has been really DIY because of the type of person we were just talking about. It tends to be a very self-reliant person. So they're like, well, I need a foraging basket. Okay, I'm going to go hew down a brown ash tree. I'm going to pound it down into, I'm going to make my own basket. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot of the people in the foraging world. But as the scene grows and people start to see it recreationally, the way they see mountain biking or hiking or camping, and people start to want to get involved in this, there's going to be a broader market for gear, equipment, apparel, like things like that we're used to seeing. Man, it's like any activity you get into, it's like there's a type of shoe for it.
Exactly right.
And it's so funny, even if you don't need it. Like I was thinking about it with golf the other day. It's like, okay, like I don't think you really need specific clothes for golf, but there's a specific outfit you wear when you golf. Yes. I don't know why, but there is. And obviously there's a shoe, and every sport is like that. Every recreational pursuit is like that. So it might sound strange to the listeners now, or sometimes I'll get accused of like, oh, you're trying to commodify it. It's like, hey, strap in, because that's what's going to happen. It's a result of popularizing it. So, do you guys see that there isn't really a place where you can get those kind of things yet? Where do you see there? And is that an aspect of things you want to take on?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've recently,
let me expand on that. Actually, let me expand on that one little bit more. Actually, and if you don't mind, let's say that I produce a specialty nut cracker that is really good for cracking black walnuts, like that are hard to crack. You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. Is there room for something like that in your store?
Yeah, absolutely. We just recently I had kind of saw this a little earlier on with, I just recently got a chaga axe, like literally 2 months ago, made by a local here in the mountains of North Carolina. Wonderful, wonderful equipment. I mean, it was the best chaga axe I could ever find, and it was handmade, and it was absolutely wonderful. And then it got me thinking, I turned to Jack, I said, maybe we should start a foraging supplies a foraging supplies category. And so we did. So we started this foraging supplies category. And, we had some sellers come forth with like foraging baskets, the plastic ones they use for commercial harvesting, which is fine. And that's cool. But then we had some more stuff like tote bags and foraging, more foraging equipment related to that. And that's kind of when the light bulb kind of hit off, like maybe this is something we could expand into later on. And as we grow, having the ability for foragers themselves to have the equipment, if they want to list it, they can. So we turn that category on. We've got several listings already from some of our community members. But as we grow, right, as we grow the community, I think it's pretty important to have kind of a one-stop shop for everyone, really, and a one-stop shop for the community itself. And I think having the uniqueness of kind of like of their own supplies is really cool. And now, no, we don't want to like turn into an Etsy, right? Because Etsy is a crafts marketplace, but it is pretty cool to have a one-stop place where you can learn about foraging. You can also purchase things if you can't find it yourselves, and you can also purchase supplies like a wicker basket handmade, or even like a foraging bag that you can use, and a foraging knife, right? So a lot of things that we can utilize in that space, and we've definitely drawn some attention to it ourselves. And I for one thought it was pretty cool if we could have some of our community members selling some of the things. Again, it's not something we want to solely focus on, but it's something that's pretty cool in my opinion. As a forager myself, I think that's pretty cool to have supplies also on the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree with that, Andy. And Daniel, your comment about different pursuits or sports activities getting commodified. What came to mind for me are the road cyclists, and how they have a $5,000 bike and the shoes and the leotard and all that stuff. But I think to Andy's
you gotta
point,
have the pocket in the back for your like power bars, like.
Exactly. Don't forget the sweet Oakleys. Gotta have the sweet Oakleys.
Very nice.
But I think to Andy's point about so Daniel, for you talking about commodification, and Andy talking about coming from the community, we're really avoiding the commodification of these types of things by going to the community, by having the individual who's hand making these things. It's not Nike the foraging basket, right? So I think it's definitely a different spin, and we want to stay true to the kind of self-reliance and personal relationship with all these types of things.
And that's really cool, man. I guess I brought it up because I'm thinking about one of the tools that I've made for myself is a berry hook, I guess you'd call it. So I'll cut a branch where it bifurcates, and so I've got like basically a pole that's got a little hook on the end. Well, anyway, so I made one of these and I use it in my show, and it's got a little piece of string at the end so I can step on it. It allows me to pull down a branch, step on that string, and then I got both my hands free to grab things.
Yep.
Well, the number of people who've been like, "Hey, where can I buy one of those?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I mean, it's like you just go out to the woods." But then realizing like, okay, that's easy for me to say, but then there's a lot of times where I want to buy the thing, and somebody's telling me I should make it. So, similarly, like here's another interesting one is like a blicky, so like a basket that hangs on your waistline, so you have two free hands to pick berries. Well, like if you search blickies, like you just see a bunch of random stuff people made. There's no company that sells them. It's like so strange to me. So when I see that in the foraging world, as I see this market developing, I just think like, hey, if somebody produced those, it might not be a big market. It's not a Nike size market, but you guys are gathering together the marketplace. So it just seems like for sellers, there's just a lot of cool opportunities as this scene grows and grows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, certainly. Totally.
All right, give me a few other food categories you guys want to have on there. You mentioned leeks, you mentioned fiddleheads, morels, but for people listening in all the diverse places, like I got friends with an amazing apple savanna of wild apples, right? So that's something they could jump in with. Or is there like other categories that you can think of that I got all the folks out in Midwest doing wild rice? I mean, goodness, what an awesome outlet for real wild rice. I mean, whenever I go to a restaurant and they serve me wild rice, that stuff they serve me is grown in patties, and it's okay. I don't hate it, but it's not nearly as good as real wild rice. I imagine that's something that there's a lot of room for. Are there any other areas where you can think of, or things you can think of just to spark the minds of people listening right now?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, wild rice would be fantastic. We actually haven't had any on the market yet. That would be a huge hit for sure. Some, like I said earlier, the stuff coming up, rams, fiddleheads, morels, the big hitters are top of mind right now. Other interesting things like magnolia buds, Japanese knotweed, wild blueberries, sumac, wild rose, sea beans, obviously pawpaws, spice berries, dandelion, walnuts. We saw a huge demand for shagbark hickory. It's a
Who's
little
the
family
demand
farm.
from?
Literally everywhere. It's
Wow.
really
Bunch of
interesting to see the orders come in.
I tried to get some from you guys, but it was sold out.
sold
They're
out.
sold
Yeah.
out. The other really interesting thing is that we don't do a ton of just like pure advertising.
Yeah.
Most of our traffic and customers find us just organically. So we see interesting like chain ordering reactions come where we'll see all of a sudden a ton of orders from Dallas, Texas, or all of a sudden from Atlanta, Georgia. So it's really great. And I think really incorporates into our ethos as well of like, we're not a big corporation. Like we're not just pumping out Facebook ads or anything. This is a community based. People are talking about it friend to friend. Anyways, back to the stuff that is really hot right now. Nuts are huge. We only have, I think, one or two
Two
small
total.
farms that are doing
Yeah.
nuts. So any type of unique nut, we actually just pushed a ton of really awesome recipe ideas around different nut milks and things you can do with black walnut creams and all sorts of really cool stuff. Check that out on our recipes page on the website. So it's just like the opportunities are endless. So I always get like so fired up and almost like flustered because there's just so many cool things that we can do. So yeah, really come one, come all.
I'm sure you guys are familiar, or I would assume you're familiar with the forager Sam Thayer, who wrote the Forager's Harvest book series.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
out in the Midwest, and just he is the guy. I mean, of
Right.
all the people that I've been able to talk to about wild food, so he's sort of the guy. And one of the things he's been working on over the years is walnut oil, and acorn oil. And what's so cool about it is acorn obviously needs to be leached to be turned into a flour, which is why it tends to be a little prohibitive, price wise. But the oils, the tannins are water soluble. So when you press the oil, you don't get any of the tannins. So you don't have to do all that processing. So he's really perfected it. He sells small bottles of it. But I think the challenge is finding it's not that sometimes I bring him up because sometimes it's not producing the product that's the challenge. It's finding a place where the product is marketable. So
Exactly.
like,
Right.
I know
Right.
he has that oil. He sent it to me. It's beautiful. But it's just like, what do you do? Go out in the street and jump up and down with it? Like, how do you let people know you have it? Because they're busy with canola oil or vegetable oil or whatever other, oil they're working with. So it's like, how do you get people's attention? So that's one of the other cool things that you guys have. Or I'm thinking I just have so many friends who would benefit from what you do. I have friends down in the desert Southwest who got a hammer mill and they pound out a beautiful flour from mesquite bean pods.
Wow.
I mean, it's just such an awesome food, but it's just
Very
like,
cool.
where do they sell it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They give it away to their friends because they're like, what do we do with this? And like,
Yeah.
you can't get people's attention. So it just seems like we've got a lot of people who listen to this show who've got something that they do that I just hope these folks reach out to. So talk to us about what does a listener do? If the listener's here and they're like me and they don't live in morel country, for instance, and they want to serve a morel dish, they can do what I did, go to your website, order some. That's pretty straightforward. Talk to us about, for the people listening who are like really want to get involved as sellers, what do they do?
Yeah, good question. So also maybe to illustrate your point just now, which was very well said, of like where do people go to try to make a go of a sale of their acorn oil or whatever that is. Kind of think about the concept of, if you want tacky cursive decorations, you're probably going to go to Etsy. Right? That's like your first stop to find something. Same thing is, we're doing that, except for things like acorn oil or truffles or huckleberries, whatever it is. It's like, the reason that it works well is because that's the place that people know to go for these unique things. Right. So to your question about to get on board to grow the business. So our website domain is a little unique. So it's www.foraged, foraged.market. It's not .com. If you go to foraged.market/sell, Yeah, hopefully soon. We're working on getting that domain, but it's a
I'm
foraged.
still saving the 55 grand I need for WildFed. So until then, I'm wild-fed.com.
Yeah, underground domain
I'm
market.
glad you understand.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Just to everybody listening, go buyyourname.com tonight and just don't let somebody hold you hostage later. Anyway, go ahead.
It was actually pretty funny early on when we started. There's all these new domain names now, like really interesting.
Right.
Rather than .com, there's all sorts of stuff. So we've realized .market was a domain. And we're like, oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Nice. So to get started growing your business, go to foraged.market/sell. And there's a bunch of information on the page about how we help grow your business, the process to get onboarded. We talk a little bit about how other places like Etsy take 40% of your earnings, which is absolutely insane. We're very simple. Just to help us run our business and make your business more successful. Super cut and dry. We only just take 10%.
Really? Wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
No listing fees. No nothing.
It's really.
We'll see how
listing
this
fees
ages.
It's wild. I mean, it really is bewildering to see the fees that Etsy, Amazon, Facebook Marketplace, because they'll say like, oh, we only take 2%. That's not true. Like, look at your statement. They typically take up to 40. We only do 10. And it just cut and dry 10%. And it really does help us make new features. Like, we're working on a ton of new stuff right now. So foraged.market/sell, there's a bunch of information about how to get started, more details about how we'll make you successful. On that page, there's a link to the questionnaire. Just submit the questionnaire. It'll ask you like, what types of things are you interested in selling, whether that's wild greens, wild fruits, mushrooms, truffles, experiences, whatever that is. Get a little bit more details about you and your story and what makes you so interesting and compelling, which let me tell you, there's some incredibly interesting things. It's really a pleasure to interact with people who are filling out the questionnaire. That'll go right to me and Andy. We talk with new interested sellers every single day. We're working on a slightly different onboarding process right now, but the way we've done it for quite a while is we'll meet with you for half hour, an hour or so over video call. We'll live set up your shop for you. We'll get your stuff listed. We'll teach you everything about the ins and outs, get feedback. We're always looking for feedback. That's the only way that we can improve our platform for you. And from there, it's you're ready to go. Like, we pretty much do it for you while you watch, and we teach you, and then you're ready to start making sales.
And it's okay if somebody goes like, hey, I've got this great thing, but I only have it for 3 weeks out of the year. Like a lot of this stuff, like Pawpaw, is going to be very seasonal, I imagine, for some folks.
Yeah, great question. So we actually implemented a waitlist and notification feature a few months ago. So we actually are having a ton of people reach out right now saying, I'll have chicken of the woods, but it's not till July. What do I do? Get the products up there and listed, because you can start building a huge wait list for people.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And the minute you have that thing in stock, you're going to get a massive email blast to all these people, and then a ton of new orders.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, man. It's really exciting. So I hope folks listening I hope they, obviously go to the site and support these sellers. But I'm really just hoping to see this marketplace expand. And I guess I want to, take us out a little philosophically here, and get your feedback on this part. But for me, a big part of why I do WildFed, we kind of started off talking about the pushback there is against foraging that's taking place. And then obviously as hunters and anglers, a lot of the folks listening, we know we've been getting pushback for a long time on that. But the reason that I promote this lifestyle is because I don't see human beings preserving a natural world they don't interact with at a meaningful level. And so, I understand the problems of overharvest. I understand the problem of too much take and how that can be an issue, and what happens if we commodify everything, natural on the planet. I know that that's a challenge, but what's a greater challenge to me is somebody who's cloistered off from nature, doesn't know what's going on out there while it's all getting developed and turned into, oil fields or gas fields or Walmarts or whatever it is. So one thing that I like is the idea that all these sellers are like a citizen army of people who are out there on the landscape, who are also deeply invested in conserving it, So outside of the business side of this, which is, the buying and the selling and the moving and the trading and all these kind of things that's going to go on in there, talk to me about what your big picture vision is, for from a conservation standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really just illustrated kind of my last 20 years of sustainability involvement, Daniel. I grew up hunting and fishing, particularly duck hunting was my favorite. And from when I was maybe 10 or so until 20 or so, the lake that I would duck hunt on every winter had less and less ice. From when I was a little kid, some days we couldn't even get out on the boat, till when I was older, it would be 60 degrees. And in college, I was involved in all sorts of different environmental sustainability, Ducks Unlimited, all of that. And I was always kind of a black sheep among the sort of academic sustainability people who would say, like, you hunt, like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're killing the earth. I thought you were a sustainability person. And I would say, what the hell are you talking about? I see climate change firsthand. I see that there's no more fish out there. I see that there are fewer ducks. Like, you're sitting in a room talking about these things. Like, you have no clue. And I think that is something, again, that people miss, is that the people out in the field who are seeing these things are not the people who are out there jumping and screaming and crying on the internet. They're the ones who know what's actually happening. They're actively conserving it, and they're the experts on it. They have the real world experience. I'm going to rely on those types of people and do my best to provide validation and credibility to the people kicking and screaming. But I think that concept of people in the field, harvesting, connecting with nature, preserving it, that's going to be the key to food systems of the future. We can't rely on factory farms forever. All the supply chain issues going around in the last couple of years with COVID and such. What happens when there's an even bigger disruption? What are people going to do for food? Worst case scenario. Well, people being involved with foraging and hunting and fishing, those are the kind of people that we're going to rely on in the future. And they're the ones who really know what's going on with our environment.
Yeah, and also when you have like a specific species, like we were talking about shagbark hickory, it's like having a reason that people want to see more of those trees around makes it, you know what I mean? Like, by commodifying the nut itself, now suddenly you've got this thing going on where people are like wanting to see more of those trees, which ensures it exists into perpetuity. Or with mushrooms, now you have like a more complicated thing, because it's not just making sure the mushroom's there, but making sure the substrate for the mushroom's there. So now you're gone like 2 layers deep into the conservation, and then what's that substrate need? So now you're like 3 layers deep, and before you know it, you're conserving swaths because you put value on something. I mean, we definitely conserve what we value, and we destroy the things that we don't value. And so I think that while I can see why it's some scary for some folks, but a lot of times it's ignorance too. I mean, I remember a fly fishing guy. I had been interviewing him, and we'd been like 3 hours in this interview, and we come outside and there's a chokecherry tree, and man, it's just loaded. And me and Grant, our producer, start foraging we got like a cooler with us that's empty. So we start filling it with chokecherries, and this guy's like wanting us to put them back. And it's like, hey, dude, I get that you do that with fish, but like that doesn't make sense with these fruits. Like, where do you think all these seeds are going to end up? Like, and we can't reach the ones on the top. Like, everything is different, and these aren't fish; these are fruits. So anyway, it's funny because sometimes people are applying the wrong kind of thinking, and then sometimes people are forgetting that by valuing it, if we just forget that they exist, we may not have them in the long run.
That's exactly right. It's kind of ironic, you bring attention to the thing, and it can be pretty well curated and hopefully compassionately done. But if you don't, you ignore it, it just sits idly by and gets depleted pretty quickly by ignorance. So I think that's a good way to put it, Daniel.
Well, you guys have apparently cracked the code on something that it's a pretty cool opportunity that you have here in this business. It's a pretty awesome opportunity you're offering people, both on both sides, the buyer side and the seller side. And I got high hopes for what you guys are going to do, because there's a lot of challenges around the future of foraging. And I believe, just this morning, I was writing voiceover for one of the episodes of the TV show, and it got to the foraging component, and there's something when I watch myself hunt versus watch myself forage, because doing what I do, I have to watch myself do these things on video. And when I watch myself forage, man, it's like I'm a child. I am just so lit up and excited by it. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like a treasure.
I don't want to see that go. I don't want to see that go away for people. I want to see the kids coming up now doing more of it than I got to do. And I want to see their kids do more of it than they got to do, not the other way around. And so businesses like yours are just going to be crucial to making this thing part of our everyday lives. So I really commend you guys, and just want to turn the space over for any last things you guys might want to say.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Daniel. It's been a wonderful conversation. We really appreciate you having us on. And I watched the first episode of WildFed the other day. It was very entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
So best of luck to you with the TV show. And we really appreciate having the platform here and getting to connect with more people in the wild and specialty food community. So hope to be back on soon.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be hearing from some folks.
I'm going to piggyback on that as well. And I really appreciate, you having us on, had some wonderful insights and conversations like this are really going to start the thinking in the right direction if it hasn't already. I think it's super important that we talk about this stuff, keep it out in the open, keep it transparent, and really just discuss all the wonderful things that can come out of it. And I think you're doing awesome stuff by bringing all this important information to light. And congrats on season 2. And thank you so much for having us on, man.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. And just want to really encourage people listening, get that side hustle going. We got to grow the wild food industry. So the marketplace. So like if you've got something that fits here, get in touch with these guys and open your own little spot there, because this is a really, really cool opportunity. And it's good to know where to go when I need these specialty foods, guys. So thanks so much. And you'll be hearing from me a lot during Pawpaw season.
Thanks, Daniel.
Take care, man.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. Help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 10 episodes. Season 2 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2022. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.